For our first ever episode, we have a really special guest. Our guest completed his PhD in molecular biology and virology and continued to choose the path of entrepreneurship, which led him to start one of the most successful biotech companies in the biotech ecosystem here in Heidelberg. Please welcome Dr. Christian Tidona.
Thank you very much, Tim Maron, Pierre. It's very nice being here on the show.
Thank you for being on the show. So, you did your PhD in virology, and you were actually headed for a great scientific career. What inspired you to choose entrepreneurship at that time?
Very good question. So when I started biology, I was driven by curiosity. So research, maybe also a little bit of impact for society. But when I advanced towards my PhD, I found out that I have two hearts in my chest, one of a scientist and one of an entrepreneur. And then there was an opportunity to start a company in Regensburg, Germany. And I decided to jump and just find out whether this is something I like. And I have been starting companies ever since.
So if you started company ever since, it means you had multiple companies. How was it after the first one was towards the end? What drove you to keep going and do a second one?
I actually had no choice because the first one was very miserable. I had actually quite a good value proposition. I wanted to change the diagnostics industry. And I had access to a new technology platform from Luminex in Austin, Texas. So that's a new technology which allows to measure multiple analytes in the same drop of blood. So my punchline was 100 tests in one drop of blood. But of course, this was a very difficult task. I only had 2.5 million and I failed. Also, have chosen the wrong partners. I got into a fight and lost all the money I had borrowed from my parents. And there was no other choice than starting something new and showing everybody else that it was not my fault.
Actually, I remember the story you said some people made a similar company somewhere else and went to jail.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Yeah, that's Elizabeth Holmes. The company is called Theranos.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
And it's a company that had the exact same punchline many years later. I don't know exactly when they started, but it must have been towards 2012 or 13. And because she was very convincing, she collected a lot of money, but the investors didn't really ask how the technology works. And she was just pretending she had a technology, and she didn't. And they were faking results and so on. And she collected really hundreds of millions of venture capital. And then the whole thing, at some point, people found out, and she actually got. There's a book about it. So it's she got a lawsuit, and she will probably never be a founder again.
So coming to the topic of failures and obstacles, how would you, as an entrepreneur, how would you describe yourself as facing these obstacles and overcoming each hurdle?
Yeah, that's a principal quality you need to have as an entrepreneur. If you're a person that doesn't like riding roller coasters, you should probably not do it, because even at my age, when you have a more advanced company, every day you get some news which is good news or bad news, and some of those you think, oh, geez, this is going to end the story, and other news where you say, oh, now we made it, it's fantastic, and it's changing every day. So if you're a very sensitive person, you will go crazy. So you need to get used to this constant roller coaster. And also one quality, I think what's very important is that you don't separate between your private and your professional life. This is something for a typical employee. So once you go home at 5 p.m, you're with your family. It's just your private life. And then when you come back to the office, you're a professional. As an entrepreneur, this is not a title. This is a way of living. And with our kids, we always had guests from all around the world at our house, business partners. We also then called our friends, and it's a constant exchange. And for example, with BioMed X, once a year, I invite the entire leadership team and all the group leaders to my house. We have barbecue together. So it's very important that you have this attitude of a lifestyle, being an entrepreneur.
That actually resonates a lot with what I feel. Because we hear sometimes this advice, you should separate the private and the professional life, which probably fits well when you're an employee. But let's say I want to make a startup, probably good co-founders will be people I can really trust. So if I only see them at work and then never outside, how can I know I will go through tough situations with them?
Yes. You're touching upon a very important point. So trust is super important. If you would have asked me 20 years ago, if you have the opportunity to fill a position, one person is the superstar, but I'm not quite sure about the personality. And the other person I know is super loyal. I've worked with many years and is not a superstar, but is very good or excellent. Then I would always go for the second one, because trust is very important. When you want to build something, you want to build, you're in the same team and you need to trust everyone. Otherwise, it becomes a one-man show, one-woman show if you all do everything yourself. So trust is important.
So coming back to building stuff, let's say you were going back to your 20s now, and you were a master's student who was about to complete his studies, and you were planning to basically redo the entire thing again. What path would you take? So like, what are the things you do again? What are the things you'd completely avoid? Would you like to touch up on that?
That's a very difficult question. What I would probably do is find a mentor much earlier. Because a mentor, and I'm not talking about a consultant. A consultant is someone who would take money and give you advice and probably has never started a company. I'm talking about a mentor. So someone who has started a company, had a successful exit, or has built a major company, and then wants to give back to the next generation. And this helps you not to do all these mistakes over and over again. And later on, in every phase of my life, I had very experienced mentors who I trusted and who helped me a lot.
That brings a bit the point how you find those mentors. So what are the situations in which you see a good mentor, and what should you do then?
Okay, I can give you an example. So my mentor right now, Ashok Rao, he's originally from India. He's in the United States. Very successful entrepreneur in the telecommunications field. Now, as he's retired, he's also, he owns a restaurant. He has made movies. So very, very active person. And when I was part of a group that started an entrepreneurship group in Leuven in Belgium, called TIE Brussels, as part of a global entrepreneurship organization called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. He was at the time, he was the chairman of the board of the global organization of TIE. Meanwhile, the world's largest entrepreneurship organization. And he gave a keynote speech, and I was completely impressed by the person. And I said, I need to learn from this guy. So I waited at the side of the stage, and then when we went from one lecture room to the other, I went with him. I introduced myself, and then I noticed that his shoelace was broken. And he had to give another speech. So I saw quickly that there was a shoemaker store. I said, wait just 1 minute. I ran into the shoemaker store, got him a new shoelace, gave it to him. And as a result, he invited me for a very nice breakfast at the house of his friend next morning. And this is where we connected, and we became friends, and he became my mentor. And we're now visiting each other's family at least twice a year. So you need to, once this opportunity comes, you need to be able to introduce yourself, discuss a big idea. And because mentors, they like to give back. I've never seen a situation where a young person asks someone, could you give me advice? And then the person says, no, I'm not going to talk to you. It's not going to happen.
The shoelace episode reminds me of something we often hear, that is go to a room where a lot of things happen and provide value without expectation of return.
Very
Just help out people, and then great things will happen. Would you say it's a good thing
Sign,
to do?
check.
Okay.
And if you're looking for a mentor, go to conferences, go to events, and look at people. And if you find someone who completely inspires you, it doesn't have to be the same field of research or the same field of business. Introduce yourself, have a chat, and then maybe connect with the person.
I see. So, coming along back onto the terms of entrepreneurship, what are some aspects of being an entrepreneur or starting a biotech firm that, when you look back now, you sort of underestimated?
Mm-hmm. Well, going back to my first startup, I underestimated everything. So, especially what happens most of the time is, and even with experienced entrepreneurs in biotech, is that you completely underestimate the amount of time and effort is needed to go from an idea to a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And what most people call a prototype is not really a prototype according to business standards. You need a proper validation, you need to have data. And it's not just, in academia, we learn that to write a publication, it's enough to have a couple of control experiments, and that's good. Validation in industry is a completely different ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And most people underestimate this. And this is for diagnostics development, and for therapeutics, that takes 12 years and hundreds of millions of investment, even worse. And of course, in addition to the time, is the risk of failure. Many people are excited scientists, and they think now it worked in a little tube, but whether it works in a human is a completely different story. And this is underestimated most of the time as well.
Mm-hmm.
With this, we're touching a bit on the fact that biotech is a really hard industry to do stuff in. We need a lot of capital. We need a lot of years until things can work. What advice would you give to current bachelor, master students who are thinking of starting a biotech company? Should they just go ahead and do one, or what would you advise them to do?
Well, there's multiple ways how you can do this. So many universities have entrepreneurship courses. In Heidelberg, we have the Scientist Entrepreneur course. And there's many other ways, but I think the most important way how you can train with the least amount of effort is participating in major business plan competitions. Mm-hmm. There is several international ones. The world's biggest student business plan competition is the one of the Rice University in Houston, Texas. Yeah. I've been a judge for many years at this Rice competition, and usually they have in May their finals with 42 teams, and there is 6 teams which really become the winners. And the advantage is that you go through several rounds, you get feedback from very experienced people, mentor type people or entrepreneurs, also investors. You get lots of contacts to potential investors. You find maybe even peers who can join your startup. And in the end, you also get prize money, in this case, in the millions, mm-hmm. As either an investment prize where you find investors, or a cash prize. And so you kill multiple birds with one stone. And if you have done this 2, 3, 4 times, finally you have a well-rounded business idea and a well-rounded pitch.
That's actually a very good point. I was thinking, okay, what if you don't win the competition? You would say, just go again.
Yes, you learn. It's the same like starting companies. The difference between the successful entrepreneur and the not so successful entrepreneur is not luck. It's not money. It's not where you come from. The successful entrepreneur has just tried one more time.
Mm-hmm. So coming back to the topic of luck, when you look back at your career, were there any moments when you just thought to yourself, wow, that was some insane
Eureka.
luck? Yeah.
There are, of course, moments of joy when things work.
Yeah.
But it's more or less a numbers game. Mm. So if you want to be successful, you need to prepare it for the right time, being at the right time, at the right place with the right idea.
Yeah.
And this only happens, you can maximize your choices, your chances in juggling multiple balls at the same time. And then hopefully one of those will then mature and be there at the right time in the right place. So in order to be successful, it's not like playing roulette. Yeah. As you know, in the casino, you always lose and the casino always wins. This is not how entrepreneurship works. You need to develop ideas, you need to develop your network, and then make sure when the right things come together, you have an idea and you know how to position that idea. And then you will get money, partners, mm-hmm. and be successful.
And in terms of like being at the right place at the right time, with the right people, of course, and having the right idea, what exactly would you say are some idea killers? And you've mentioned about like finding the right mentor and mm-hmm. seeking the right mentorship, but who are the people that you'd kind of avoid with the right idea?
Yeah. From the perspective of, let's say, an investor or mentor, I would expect people to be open. Otherwise, they're wasting my time. So if someone says, I have this very secret startup idea, but I'm not going to tell you the technology, like this Elizabeth Holmes, who then got a lawsuit. Of course, if you are very open with people, sometimes people take advantage of your idea. They will steal your idea, scoop your idea. But my advice would be open always, because despite the couple of people that take advantage, this is where you meet the people and build the most trustful relationships that will then carry you into a very successful career. So I would always advise people to be open, because openness opens doors.
So if we take the perspective of a race, it would be like you help others get faster by putting an idea out there, but yourself go so much faster because you put it out there, because you win trust of investors, you win trust of other people you might work with. So everybody gets faster, but you even more.
Yeah, I mean, helping each other is it's something that creates trust, and if you help others to grow, they hopefully will help you back. And if you have self-confidence in your unique capabilities, your unique performance, and you concentrate on your outstanding performance, then everything else will fall into place at some point. At least I believe in this. Whether this is right, there might be people who have a completely different opinion.
So Christian, looking back at your career, what would you say was the most difficult period of your entrepreneurial journey?
My first startup, for sure. I was starting with the wrong people. All the other founders were professors, and I found out only later that they were using the money I had collected to co-finance their academic research, because it's easier if you're an academic researcher, if you collaborate with a company to get access to public funding. And I wanted to generate products, and they wanted to just use the money as co-financing, and that, of course, was not viable. They turned out to be stronger. So in a lawsuit, I lost the money I had borrowed from my parents. And everybody was saying, we told you, stay at university. Why did you start a company? So that was really difficult. But since then, I can smell idiots from a mile against the wind, right? So it's I learned a lot.
That's really inspiring.
And it's also, I mean, even today, the most expensive mistakes in entrepreneurship are hiring mistakes. You trust the wrong people. And then it turns out later, and this is what really not just costs you, but also the organization. So building this trust and sort of then working with the right people for a long period of time, that's the most important thing.
Something I'm curious about right now, your company is in a growth phase. And you said also in the past that you were focusing on growth a lot. How is it different growing a company than starting a new one?
That's a very good question as well. You determine or you set the stage at the point when you start the company. And the way you start the company will determine what the story for the company will be. And this is why BioMed X I still own the company, it's still privately owned. There's no venture capital, no public money involved. Why? Because public money ends at some point, and that I've witnessed a couple of times, that if this funding ends, many times also the company ends, because we're not able to generate the cash flow you need to maintain the company. And most importantly, venture capital. So once you take venture capital, you have promised someone to return the money at a multiple. This means, by definition, in this time period, which is interesting for the investor, you need to sell the company. You need to have an exit story. And if you want to build something sustainable, you cannot have an exit story, because you don't want to sell. Of course, you want to build it. As an example, in Germany, we're actually quite good in building these long-term companies. If you look, for example, at Merck, close to 360 years old, still in the hands of the same family. They own more than 70% of the shares. And they have a long-term perspective. Boehringer Ingelheim, very similar situation. And this gives stability and long-term perspective to a company. And if you want to create impact on the long run, and not just build something, sell, get rich, buy yourself a boat, but create impact, then you need to not use venture capital from the beginning. You need to use another source of funding. In our case, it was revenues.
Connecting two dots we have here, you said business competitions are really a good way to learn a lot of things. If somebody starts a company there, then it's in this model where they have to sell at some point, right? So would you advise to go to the business competition to learn, then build a first company, maybe sell it, and only for the second company try something that grows organically? Or can someone try to grow something organically from the beginning?
That's a good question. It depends on your appetite as a founder. There is a type of founders that is very happy in getting rich and just getting rich and don't care too much about impact. If you care about impact, you need to think about not using venture capital and using other funding sources. The business plan competitions are, by definition, something where you are looking for VC, where you're looking for an investor. Still, there are business angels who have a longer perspective. So it depends on which type of investor you choose from the beginning. I'm not saying every investor has only short-term interest. There's quite a few investors, especially business angels, who would be very happy in owning a company on the long run, in part, and then getting dividends as a return on investment.
So if we do this long-term strategy, how is the day-to-day different with a startup where we have to sell at some point? Like, do you think it's very different what you do in the day-to-day, or it's similar?
It's massively different. If you have an exit story and in, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you need to sell at a multiple, it drives you towards exaggerating, right? You want to pretend that you have a huge value, which you then can sell. And this is, in the United States, even worse than in Europe. So you have this statement, fake it until you make it. They're really, it's fraud, I think, telling your investors what you have achieved if you have not achieved it. So you need to be very honest, in my view, especially as a scientist, with what is still in front of you and what are the risks still, and not exaggerating, for example, that you have found a cancer therapy and in essence you have some cell culture experiments. So it's, and this is something you need to do if you want to fulfill the promise to your venture capitalist. If you have a long-term perspective like BioMed X, this is also a reason why we did not use venture capital, is you can be very blunt and honest with what you can do and with what you cannot do, and you can even leave money on the table if you don't like a partner, for example.
I see. And coming back to the United States, you really recently expanded BioMed X to New Haven. So what exactly were the factors and the other important things that influenced that decision?
I was very lucky that I have a very long friend in the United States, also an entrepreneur, Mark Johnston. And when we had this idea of expanding to the United States, I called Mark. He had just finished his previous startup, and I asked him, "Would you like to collaborate and build BioMed X in the US?" And he was on board immediately. And then, of course, the question was where do we do it? And since we are not venture capital financed, we need to make an informed choice, because if this choice is wrong, we lose a lot of money and maybe we risk the entire construct. So we looked at 80 different locations in the United States together. And then we were traveling to some of them and look at them more closely. And then we ended up at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, for multiple reasons. One of them, of course, it's a fantastic university, one of the top universities in the world. Second, their tech transfer was very welcoming. So they really liked the idea of being associated with BioMed X. And then also, if you visit Yale University, you will see it's a very, let's call it, un-American university. It's very much like Oxford or Cambridge in UK, because you have very old buildings with chapels and with colleges where students would sit with their professors under an old tree and discuss science, food trucks, and so on. And this is very different from the way how you would imagine other top universities in the United States. Harvard is very similar as well, but Cambridge is too expensive. So to do projects in in Cambridge would have cost 4 or 5 times as much for the exact same project what we're investing in at Yale. So it was immediately the Yale environment felt like our new home.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a restaurant called Old Heidelberg. So we still have an old photo where we sort of did a selfie with Old Heidelberg in the back.
Yeah.
Do you sleep better at night now or 5 years ago, depending on the growth stage of the company? At the beginning, you could think, okay, I still have to prove a lot of things. We're not that established, and then everything can go wrong quite quickly. At the same time, when you have a bigger company, there's more at stake. The impact is already bigger, so if something goes wrong, it has bigger ripple effects. So
good question. Well, it's very similar to raising children. Small children, small problems. Big children, big problems. So you maybe had these types of discussions with your parents as well. It's of course in the beginning everything is fluid, everything is improvising, and of course the risk is smaller because you just started. Once you grow, there's responsibility for a lot of employees. These are all families, and it's a weight if you're an empathic person, you feel the weight. At the moment, BioMed X worldwide, we are close to 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
If we have to shut down, these families will not have a job, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a big responsibility. But of course, being bigger also means more diversified and means the income is more steady, more foreseeable than in a pure startup improvising stage.
So you've obviously talked to a lot of people during your career. How important would you say is networking? Because I feel like that term gets thrown around a lot these days, where people are like, yeah, if you want to start your own thing, you just need to network. So how exactly would you say would be the right way to network? And how exactly would you distinguish between networking and kind of like building your own thing?
It's very similar to the difference between a meaningful email conversation and a spam mailing.
Mm-hmm.
So networking just for the sake of it and just to collect business cards is worthless. Mm. The way I would describe networking is you build a network of trustful relationships, and this is super important. I mean, the entire business at BioMed X, a lot of the success goes back to a network which I've built for the last more than 20 years. What made it very easy for BioMed X to enter the market in innovation and asking for several million from a pharmaceutical company to do exploratory research is because of the very close and trustful relationships to senior management in those pharma companies. Mm-hmm. And the same is with mentors, people I can call if I encounter a difficulty which I cannot solve myself. I just pick up the phone and usually I know who to call to give me advice. So network is super important. LinkedIn is super important for career development, and building these trustful relationships is very important.
Let's maybe get a bit into not numbers, but order of magnitude. You say building trustful relationships is important, but of course we only have 24 hours per day. Mm-hmm. So the more people you know, the less time you can spend with each of them. So how many mentors would you get? How many close friends to start maybe something with would you get?
It's a good question. I mean, books have been written about it. I sort of try to look at it in the form of circles. Mm-hmm. Of course, family is the most inner circle. And then together with family, you have these very close friends you can rely on. And they're also entrepreneurs, mentors. I don't think there is people who have bandwidth for more than 10 of those. And then there might be something like 50, which is the wider network. So people you really trust, people who would come and help you if you have a problem, but you would not meet every week. And then there is these larger networks of connections. For example, the circle of people I communicate frequently with in the pharma industry is maybe 1,500. So that's the maximum my brain can take. And then there's everything else. But so the inner circle, more than 10 really meaningful relationships with friends where you sort of invite each other to the weddings of the children, and you're very close. If you get into trouble, you would discuss very openly. More than 10, I think, is very difficult.
Speaking of children and family, how would you think it impacts an entrepreneurship career? Would you say it helps, or would you say it gets in the way?
It depends how you manage it. So if you do it the entrepreneurial way, which we discussed earlier, where you don't distinguish between your private life and your professional life, and you take kids, family, your spouse on business trips. They are part of your negotiations, of the dinners and so on. Then it's actually not so difficult to have a very meaningful family life and at the same time be very successful in business. The problem is once you start separating this, because there's simply not enough time in the day if you don't do things together.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we started this podcast, like one of the reasons we started this podcast is for students who, or like for like science or business students who've reached the point of their studies and now they're like, okay, well, what's next? For students at that point of their career who once were like with so much of passion and so much of interest, but now they've kind of like reached that point of their studies where they're kind of like on autopilot right now. What advice would you give them to basically regain that interest or reignite that spark in them?
In my experience, and we're talking about biosciences or natural sciences. So in my experience, there's 3 fundamentally different directions in which you can go with such a background. The first most obvious is an academic career. In an academic career, the advantage is you have freedom of curiosity-driven research. You decide what you want to work on in a university position, you apply for grants, and then you do exactly what you like most. But at the end of your life, what you can show your grandchildren when they ask you, Grandpa, Grandma, what was your biggest achievement in life? You show them a Nature publication. And then they look at you and say, okay. So if you want to create impact with your research, and in our field, this is for patients, so it's helping someone cure a disease, then you need to be involved in products, and this is what you do in industry. So if you go for an industry career, you're focused on products. Probability is high that you will be involved in development of some products that ultimately will help patients. The downside is that, of course, because you're an employee of a big company, you don't have ownership in this product. If you want ownership, you need to become an entrepreneur and start your own company. Then you have ownership. But to close the circle, what I can tell you is if you are in a startup, you don't have freedom because you do exactly what your investors tell you. And so at some point in life, you need to decide, am I an academic person, an industry person, or an entrepreneur? And places like BioMed X are places where you can sort of try this out, learn about all the 3 directions, and then after that, make an informed decision what your next career step is.
But would you say that they're like outliers where people have like in the Venn diagram, the point in between, like the intersection point between them? Yeah.
Sure. I'm an example. So I like the interface between academia and industry. So at BioMed X, we're neither academia nor industry. But then if you want something like this, you need to build it yourself because there's not many places out there.
What does your typical day look like? Some people might wonder, I also want a company, but actually, what is your day filled with? Do you more talk to people? Do you write emails? Do you travel a lot?
Yeah, so first of all, as an entrepreneur, there is no typical day. Every day is different. The common denominator is usually I wake up with at least 3 new ideas. And my personal problem, as a kid, I was a typical, you would call it ADHD type of person who was interest for everything, but not really focused. So my discipline is to every morning to focus myself on the top 2-3 things I want to do this day. Because my calendar is double booked more or less. So I need to get comfortable with the situation that I'm disappointing at least 20-30% of the people because I won't have time for them. So focus is very important. And then there's these eureka moments or these oh damn moments where you don't know what's going to happen next. But the main job of an entrepreneur and my main duty is making sure that everybody in the company can work productively and happily. And this means whenever shit hits the fan, I go there and I help getting things in order so that people can continue working.
What is a typical problem that arises, those oh damn moments? Like what happens?
Oh, so many things. I mean, imagine we're doing research. A key experiment of a very important research group goes south, or in the middle of the experiment, a very big instrument breaks down and needs a big repair, or a customer, so a pharma company, makes a strategic decision to shut down an entire research department, which is important for us. There's so many things that can happen every day, but in a good and in a bad way.
Do you take time to schedule travels where you will seek out something completely new, or do you just focus on getting done what's already on the way? Because it's also the job of the company leader to come up with the next things, right?
Yeah, it was a learning process. So when I was running startups in which there were venture capital investors, the first question is always travel budget, right? So they don't want you to just enjoy traveling, and nobody looks after the company. But I've learned over time to fit. It's very much like at Google, where one day a week you do something else in order to create new ideas. And this is also how I plan my trips. So there is, when you look through the entire year, 80% of course are very much focused on current problems, current tasks, current focus of the company. And 20% more or less are things where I'm not 100% sure how that is going to generate additional revenues, additional business, or how that's going to help in any way. And my most meaningful contacts, like with my mentor Ashok, which I mentioned, that came through an activity which was not my primary business activity. It was starting an entrepreneurship club with some friends in Belgium, which did not add to the business. In the end, I found one of the most important persons in my life, and that helped me in many other ways.
I see. So coming back to the topic of choosing the right path, how exactly would you describe your path? As in, would you say that it was a path where you do it all over again, or would it be a path where, I don't know, you're like, I would have done that differently, or I don't know, I would have definitely done that again?
Of course, afterwards you're always more intelligent. It's like asking yourself when you invest into stocks at the stock market, and then you ask yourself, what if I had known that this stock is going up or down that much? It's a useless question, because you cannot go back, and you just sort of destroy your potential feeling of happiness if you always go for the past, what you've done wrong. I don't think I would do things differently, because I'm very happy with my life at the moment as it is, and I would be afraid if I change a little thing, chaos theory, the whole thing would go into a completely different direction. So I'm actually a very, very happy person.
Speaking of past experience, I want to shift a bit to the region of Heidelberg. You were there at the beginning by co-founding BioRN. How did the landscape evolve over the last, 10, 20 years?
Many years, even more. So the concept of this campus was generated in the late 70s. And this was the time when molecular biology started. So people were working with DNA and starting to generate bacteria, genetically modified bacteria, and then cells. And it became very obvious that this is going to change biomedical research. And there were many of the of the early career scientists who went to the US at the time to learn about molecular biology. They came back here and became professors. So it was obvious to the mayor of the city at the time and also the rector of the university that this is going to be big. And the good decision at the time was to identify the Neuenheimer Feld campus here, which at the time was just agricultural area, and said, this is a square mile we want to systematically develop. And this included moving all the clinics of the hospital within a time frame of 40 years onto this spot. So the last few hospitals, the last few clinics are now being completed. So it's a very long process. And then there was additional impetus, which came from the federal government. So there was a big competition in the 90s, in 1995, so-called BioRegio competition. And everybody got together and wrote a very compelling application. At that time, the focus was how do we generate startups in biotech? And the region won. And this was the major boost. Many companies were started during that time in the late 90s. And then the second boost was in 2008, the so-called leading edge cluster competition, where the German government tried to find out which are the 15 strongest high-tech regions in Germany with the best perspective to develop. And at the time, 2008, I was asked to write the strategy for Heidelberg. And long story short, we won. And as a result, we started BioRN. And at the time, I had 85 million euros for collaborations between academia and industry. And that was the focus of the second boost. So first was startup, second was collaboration between academia and industry. And then one of these outcomes of that time was BioMed X, which then when I decided I need to start my own research institute.
What do you think are priorities for the region to develop even more in the life science areas? What should we focus on now for the next 5-10 years?
There is a master plan for, it's called Master Plan 2050. So we're talking about a very long time, 25 years. And this master plan is already in place. So the major goal is to double the amount of researchers, which currently is roughly 22,000 people working on the Neuenheimer Feld campus, double them in the next 25 years, and also the space, of course. What hasn't been solved really is infrastructure and traffic. So I don't think there's a good idea how we get 50 or 40,000 people into the campus and out every day. But hopefully they will figure out at some point. But it's very important to have this walkable distance. This has turned out to be the major competitive factor for Heidelberg, that everything is walkable. It's roughly 100 institutes in biomedical research within walking distance. And there's not many places in Europe where you have a similar density.
Something that caught my eye as soon as I came into the room was actually the poster over here, which was Allergic to Mediocrity.
Uh-huh.
It's something that I resonate with a lot because that was one of the reasons why I'm in Germany right now. So how exactly would you say you implement that into your day-to-day or at BioMed X?
It's once you represent an employer and you take your responsibility that you have an influence on people's careers and future lives, this becomes very important. And I mean, we all have a very limited lifespan. And my personal focus is impact. This means I need to devote most of my attention to people I think have the biggest potential of creating impact. And that's exactly the top performers. But the top performers who have at the same time embraced the concept of growing by helping others. So not very egotistic people who push everyone aside, people who share their ideas and help each other. And this is very much at the basis of what we do at BioMed X. We do these very intense bootcamps where we identify scientists and we don't let them sleep for a couple of nights. And they come up with really brilliant project proposals. But one of the main tasks of putting people really under this stressful situation is finding out what their true personality is. And we focus entirely on people who are outstanding scientists, but at the same time help others and share ideas. And if you put lots of those into one spot, magic happens.
How do you find new people for bootcamps? What is the process looking like?
So we put it on our crowdsourcing platform, career.bmedx.com. And then people submit project proposals to the calls we're publishing. And these calls are always very big future questions for biomedical research, which we develop together with pharma companies. And then usually we get between 200, 300 proposals from 60, 70, 80 countries. So it's really global. And then it's an automated system where we give access to an evaluation committee of our pharma partner. They see all the incoming applications with instructions how to score them. And then we identify the 15 most brilliant individuals, and they are then invited to a bootcamp, and we pay for everything. We fly them in, and they see each other for the first time and associate in groups and develop these really outstanding proposals.
So when you meet individuals, or have there been instances when you're 5 minutes into the conversation or they're 5 minutes into the pitch and you're like, yep, you're the one?
Many times it's even faster. So, you might have noticed is when you're dealing a lot with people, and especially with scientists, it doesn't take too long until you see whether somebody has a high potential or not. What you don't see in these short conversations is whether they're really good people, because you can pretend being a nice person when you're in a very relaxed situation. But in our bootcamps, not having slept for a couple of nights, your true nature will come out. And then if you're a jerk, you will start treating people badly. And then you will never get a chance to join BioMed X. But it's what is very important to sort of maximize your chances also in life as a scientist is you need to use correct terminology. So no slang, no baby language. And you need to discuss big ideas. That's what attracts other top people to join you. It's not gossip about day-to-day or small talk. It's discussing big ideas. So make sure you always have big ideas in your head and you communicate them well.
What would you like BioMed X to have achieved in the long term, in 20 years, 30 years?
Wow, I won't be around in 30 years. But in the end, it's impact. So my main benchmark is where are the alumni of BioMed X in 10, 20, 30 years from now? Is this really a global family? Are they in leadership positions? Are they sort of conveying this focus on one hand, great science, on the other hand, also on impact and sharing ideas? Are they conveying this to the next generation? So did we teach them well? And hopefully it will be a global family with literally thousands of individuals that have gone through the BioMed X school. And of course, on the other hand, impact is also our core mission to translate great research from academia into industry and then into something that will help patients. So on the long run, hopefully we'll also see new therapies emerging where we can say, well, we have laid the groundwork for these new therapies.
That brings us to the closing of this episode. Christian Tidona, thank you so much for making this possible. Would you have a last message for our listeners before they go?
Oh, enjoy science and make sure you meet great people throughout your life and connect and make meaningful connections. Other than that, thank you very much, Maron. And yeah, it was really nice being on your podcast.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then see you on the next episode.